Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful. We appreciate you being here. The board had a closed meeting earlier this evening and certified compliance immediately after, upon convening in public the forum work session, which preceded tonight's regular meeting. A few announcements before we begin tonight's meeting. Ms. Dernak-Kofax and Ms. Schultz and Ms. Chu will be absent this evening. If you would like to review a copy of the agenda and any agenda item that is being discussed tonight, that information is on the table by the auditorium entrance. Tonight's agenda is available by going to the school board on the FCPS homepage and selecting board docs under upcoming school board meetings. The meeting is also being streamed live online. Select school board from the full menu, then click on Watch Live button on the school board meetings webpage. Please turn off or silence your cell phone. I also wanted to welcome our student leadership cohort tonight. We were very pleased to have them at our forum earlier this evening, and we want to welcome those that were able to stay for our board meeting as well. Normally, our school board representative recognizes Boy Scouts in the audience, but she's unable to join us tonight. Are there any Boy Scouts in the audience who, okay, please stand up and let us know where you're from. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for joining us. We next turn to item 2.04, resolution honoring Lake Ann Elementary School's 50th anniversary, and I call on Ms. Hines for the resolution.
Thank you so much. This is such a pleasure to do this. I have been in Reston. I see some of the Lake Ann folks here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to celebrate this wonderful, wonderful school. I've been in Reston for 10 years myself, which makes me something of a newbie. A couple of years ago, Reston celebrated its 50th anniversary. And in the same year, Reston's founder, Bob Simon, the late Bob Simon, celebrated his 100th birthday. So there are folks who go way back in Reston. At the same time, there's always new and exciting things happening, but there are certain institutions in Reston that go back to the beginning, and Lake Ann Elementary School is one of those, celebrating your 50th anniversary this year. So we do have a proclamation that I'm happy to read. And then after I read it, we'll ask our friends from Lake Ann Elementary to come up front, and we'll have a picture. So, whereas Lake Ann Elementary School, the first public school to open in Reston, Virginia, will proudly celebrate its 50th anniversary on January 19, 2017, and its reputation for providing, excuse me, I work with children. This is what this is about. Generations of students from a richly diverse community with an excellent academic foundation. And whereas Lake Ann is a high-performing elementary school dedicated to providing a strong instructional program in an inviting school environment for its students who represent over 70 countries and speak 38 different languages, and has enriched students through its two-way Spanish immersion, ESOL, special education, advanced academics, and Head Start services, along with young scholars, artists in residence, eco-school, Grace Art, MentorWorks, and Partners in Print programs. And whereas the school has continued to provide the best educational tools and learning opportunities for its students by embracing new initiatives, implementing a guided reading program with an extensive reading resource room, recognizing the importance of arts in education, in developing creative minds and providing alternative avenues for learning, renovating its facilities and equipping classrooms with the latest educational technology, integrated smartboards, and an enhanced audio system. And whereas the faculty, parents, and community of Lake Ann are committed to increasing the emotional well-being and academic achievement of all students, while viewing its diversity as a unique opportunity and strength that enriches and broadens the educational experiences of all students and prepares them to be 21st century learners. And whereas thousands of students have passed through the doors at Lake Ann Elementary and benefited from a comprehensive education and the efforts of dedicated and caring teachers and staff whose vision is that all students learn and become literate, self-motivated, well-rounded, independent learners who demonstrate responsibility to self and society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County School Board honors Lake Ann Elementary School on the occasion of its 50th anniversary, commends the school on its history of providing educational excellence and enrichment opportunities to the students and community, and conveys its most heartfelt best wishes for a successful anniversary celebration. I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Wilson. Ms. Hines, would you like to speak to your motion?
Well, the only thing I would add, which I didn't say at the beginning, is just that Lake Ann Elementary goes back to the beginning of Reston, not only physically, but also in the spirit of the place. You know, one of the great things about Reston is that it's always been an inclusive and inviting community. 50 years ago, some of the people who were invited to live together side by side in Reston, and in the rest of Virginia, were not necessarily living side by side. It's always been a place that has mixed demographic groups and economic groups, and Lake Ann Elementary, its students and the community around it reflects that. And Lake Ann does such a great job. I know over the summer they reach out to the community. They open the school to the community. There's some large apartment complexes right near the school where the families come in, and there's just a wonderful partnership between the community and the school. Always has been, and so it's such a pleasure to celebrate with you.
Mr. Wilson, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, just very briefly. Having lived in this area for quite some time, very near to Reston, I've often gone over to the Lake Ann area, and I just want to say congratulations to the Lake Ann principal, faculty, staff that helps things run, and of course the students, because I gather from reading all of this that you're quite an exemplar for Fairfax County Public Schools in terms of being responsive to the beauty of diversity and also high academic achievement in the school setting. So congratulations.
Right. With that, all those in favor, raise your hand. And that vote is unanimous and passes.
Okay, at this time, I would like to invite Lake Ann Principal Jill Stewart and others in the audience who are from that wonderful school to join us at the dais for a photo.
Item 2.05, 2017 FCPS Human Trafficking Resolution. I call on Mr. McElveen for the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm honored to read the 2017 FCPS Human Trafficking Resolution. Whereas human trafficking remains a largely unperceived threat to the students of Fairfax County, misunderstood and underappreciated by a majority of the community despite its persistence and prevalence across the nation and in our county, still on track to eclipse drug trafficking by revenue generated in the near future, with growing evidence that criminal organizations are specifically targeting Northern Virginia as an especially lucrative market. And whereas human traffickers are known to target not only middle and high school teens, but even elementary school students, so that victims have been identified from every high school and multiple middle and elementary schools across the county, with teens and younger children stalked physically at locations such as shopping malls and bus stops and online through all social media, particularly those applications that offer anonymity. And whereas new trafficking victims continue to come from a wide variety of ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds, and many students do not recognize the warning signs when they or their friends are being groomed and manipulated by so-called friends until it is too late to escape, with victims trapped by threats of violence or exposure and often by physical abuse. And whereas Fairfax County Public Schools, with the support of the Just Ask Prevention Foundation, continue to teach a widely admired teen sex trafficking prevention curriculum in grades 6 through 12, which serves as a model for other jurisdictions and has made notable progress in raising awareness of the threat and steps students can take to mitigate it. And whereas student groups at an increasing number of Fairfax County high schools and middle schools have held campaigns to raise awareness about teen sex trafficking and activate thousands of teens. And as a direct result of these campaigns, new leads have been brought to the attention of law enforcement authorities and victims have been rescued. And whereas alongside these student groups, educators, parents, medical professionals, law enforcement officials, civic organizations, and the business community have all stepped forward to emphasize the importance of bringing awareness about teen sex trafficking to young people, and desire to further mobilize students and others in the community to progress toward an environment where this crime is not tolerated and its victims receive the full support of the community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County School Board joins the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors in recognizing the month of January 2017 as Human Trafficking Awareness Month in Fairfax County, and supports the efforts of all those who are seeking to eliminate human trafficking and its impact on our community. I so move.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Corbett Sanders. Mr. McElveen, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Chairman Evans. I will speak very briefly to it. I would like to emphasize, as I mentioned in the text, that this is a resolution that is now passed for the third year annually by both the Board of Supervisors and Fairfax County School Board. And I think it reflects the emphasis that's being placed on this issue by both boards and as a county as a whole. And I think we have witnessed what's been a tremendous partnership between the school system, the police department, and the Just Ask Prevention Group, which is made up of parents, students, community members, and it's really brought a critical awareness to this issue, which many people do not perceive as relevant to our community. With that.
Mrs. Corbett Sanders.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Evans, and thank you to Mr. McElveen for reading the resolution and really bringing this to the board 3 years ago. This is an issue that is very near and dear to my heart. I am the first to recognize that as a multi-generational resident of Fairfax County and of Mount Vernon, I believed the two biggest myths about trafficking, that human trafficking did not happen in my community and it only happened to certain people. My beliefs were shattered in the fall of 2015 when I attended a senior citizens meeting in our community, and a grandmother mentioned that a 15-year-old child, a student at our local school, was missing, and could I pray for her family? They were having a prayer service the next evening, and I attended. And that was when I began my journey of learning more about this evil undercurrent, which happens increasingly in Fairfax County and Northern Virginia. One of the speakers, a young 20-something, was a survivor of trafficking whom had been rescued by our police. She had been abducted as a teenager by an elderly man who had offered her a ride from a bus stop in the pouring rain. There were no door handles inside the car. He sold her for a nominal fee and continued on his way. Human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world today. And although human trafficking includes labor and sex trafficking, our children are particularly vulnerable to sex traffickers who prey upon children in vulnerable situations like the one I first heard about, or in situations where a child may be demonstrating challenges of seeking love, friendship, or connections with others, as well as basic needs of food, clothing, or shelter. Students as young as 11 and the majority between 15 and 17 are being approached online and in public places. Right about now, you may be asking yourself, well, what can I do about this? Well, our police force and our community is increasing its efforts to combat these crimes, but we as parents have a role as well. Talk to your children about this sensitive topic. Talk about what friendships really mean, and hold on a second, I'm sorry. Talk about what friendships really mean and about the risk of social media. Monitor your students' social presence and certainly learn more about this issue of human trafficking. The Just Ask Prevention Organization is a good starting place.
Thank you. And with that, we will vote on the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. And that vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
And at this time, I'd like to invite Jody O'Hearn and the other members of the Just Ask Prevention Foundation to join us at the dais for photos.
The next order of business is citizen participation. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to not more than 3 minutes. The school board will not hear statements involving issues that have been scheduled for public hearings, such as capital improvement program, budget, and boundaries. Complaints regarding individual students or school-based employees shall be directed to the appropriate school principal or other school official. Speakers should refrain from using personally identifiable information in connection with an individual student. Speakers are expected to deliver their comments with the decorum and respect appropriate to the conduct of the public's business. Please be mindful that there are often young children in the audience at these meetings or watching at home, so language should be appropriate for all age levels. Thank you for your cooperation, and thanks to those who have come out tonight to speak with us. Tonight, 9 citizens have signed up to address the board, and we also have 1 video testimony. Our first speaker is Adelaide Wilkinson, speaking on the award of contract for Waynewood Elementary renovation. Ms. Wilkinson?
Hi, my name is Adelaide Wilkinson, and I'm going to talk on the issues of transgender bathrooms. When first
Oh,
presented...
excuse me, Ms. Wilkinson, you've signed up to speak about the Waynewood Elementary School renovation? And we don't have the transgender issue on the agenda tonight.
I was told that since I was a student that I could speak about what I wanted to.
Our rules allow you to do that if you come, if you don't sign up ahead of time. Did she sign up at? Okay, well, go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Wilkinson.
When first presented with the issue of transgender bathrooms, FCPS gave transgender people a separate bathroom. I think that this was a good resolution and the issue should have ended there. However, FCPS started saying that transgender people should get to go to whatever bathroom they want. I think this should not be the case. This could be related to the matter of separate but equal. In 1896, a case of a black man who had refused to give up his seat for a white man caused the court to make a new law, separate but equal. Now, we all know that this is morally wrong, so why is gender different? Well, if you put a white man next to a black man, the one and only difference is skin color, besides the obvious personality and slight look differences. However, if you put a woman next to a man, there are many differences. Besides physical, there are psychological differences that have been proven by science. Now, relating to this, the Separate but Equal Act was repealed when they found out that black people were not being treated as equals. This should be true for men and women. We should be separated in the necessary areas, but we should still be treated equally. My teacher gave an example of this when he was teaching about the Separate but Equal Act. He simply said, "I can promise you girls that the boys' locker room doesn't have a TV." Men and women should be allowed to do the same things as each other, but they shouldn't be forced to be the same. Excuse me while I completely change the subject, but this is about transgender issues. But if somebody had depression, would you encourage them to continue having depression? Would you tell them that it is perfectly normal to feel completely sad and hopeless and encourage them to continue feeling that way? Or would you try to help them overcome the bad feelings and learn how to be happy again? This is how it is with transgender people. Transgenderism has actually been classified as a mental disorder. There are still normal people just going through a hard time. Should we encourage them to continue feeling separated and uncertain, or should we help them overcome their trial? I, for one, think that we should help them get through this tough spot in their lives and continue with a life happily without being treated differently, even by people who do everything they can to make life better for them. Let them have their own bathroom. We don't want to make them uncomfortable, but let everyone else in the school be comfortable too. We should do everything we can for the minority, but let's not make the majority's lives bad. We should also do this simply for the reason that it is morally correct. I feel sometimes in present day that there are no morals or ethics. Maybe some think that there shouldn't be, but if we get rid of morals, then we are getting rid of following the law, telling the truth, being kind, and so much more. Couldn't we have a world with morals and right and wrong? Now, not everything is black and white, but there are things that are black and white. That's what I think morals are, doing good things and not doing bad things.
Thank you. Next speakers are Catherine Levia and Dahlia Ghanem, speaking on the McLean High School facility sponsorship.
Hello, I'm Dahlia Ghanem with Inspire Virginia.
I'm Johanna from Inspire Virginia.
And I'm Carly from Inspire Virginia.
And we're here today to tell you our concern about our high school students not knowing the ability that they have to vote.
So our organization is nonprofit, nonpartisan, and we just educate the youth on their ability to register to vote and get their voices out there.
Could you step a little closer to the microphone? I think we're having a little hard time hearing you. Okay.
We're from a nonpartisan, non-biased organization that teaches the youth that they have a voice and they can register to vote. And we just offer more insight on ways that we can register students. And it's more like peer-to-peer, so there's more trust, there's more like discussion between us, so the kids can get more involved in the voting processes with us. And our concerns are that FCPS schools aren't allowing us to practice this kind of like thing.
Yeah, so our goal is to register 85% of our senior class. The three of us are seniors at different high schools in FCPS. And I go to Marshall High School, and my principal has approved us going into classrooms to register students. And we also do pledge to vote and pledge to register. Instead of just registering the students, we follow through to make sure they're getting out to the polls and really being involved in the process. But a lot of other FCPS schools have not gotten this approval from their principals to go into the classrooms, and we were hoping that we could fix that.
I go to Annandale High School, and all I have been able to do is remind my peers that they have the ability to use their voice now, but I haven't seen a change, and I feel that if we have this ability, if we have the power to like tell them that they have this ability to share their voice, then we will actually see a change, because we've seen changes around the world, we've seen changes around the country, and if we are allowed to do this with our organization, then we can see more changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Helen Graff, speaking on the human trafficking resolution.
Good evening, board members. I am a Fairfax County taxpayer and a mother of 3 children. I'm here to talk to you about Fairfax County Public Schools human trafficking resolution. Human trafficking is wrong, but then why is the school board trying to impose similar types of human abuse in public schools? The school board should be aware that by definition, child slavery includes submitting children to threatening, abusive, and hazardous situations with the intent to exploit children at someone else's gain, like forcing students to endure members of the opposite sex using their bathrooms, showers, and locker rooms, forcing educators and students to lie about biology and science and to promote a false reality or lie, coercing students to violate their religious faith or coercing students to violate their religious faith or risk being suspended or expelled from school, sexualizing impressionable children at younger and younger ages while they are still developing physiologically and physically by exposing them to inappropriate material. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't this conflict with FCPS mission statement, which states FCPS inspires and empowers students to meet high academic standards, lead healthy, ethical lives, and be responsible and innovative global citizens. You encourage students to become global citizens, yet you discredit the citizens of Fairfax County when you fail to involve the vast majority of the community in your decision-making in a number of highly controversial issues, such as changes to Policy 1450, which violates state policy, the inappropriate FLE education, and allowing inappropriate sexually explicit material to be used in classrooms with no regard to parents. Have you sought out medical advice to capture what the lasting ramifications are by implementing such controversial issues? Human trafficking is a problem that we as a community need to work together to stop, and so is forcing children to endure 1450's gender identity and current FLE. Parents want to work with you to help our children be successful in life and better our communities, not to hinder them. It is deeply troubling that this board has carelessly overstepped in many controversial areas, but you have a chance to correct your mistakes. I urge you to do that. Keep gender identity out of Policy 1450. Be responsible stewards of the public's investment. Understand the values our country was founded on. Our children are counting on us to do what's right and lead by example. Thank you for your partnership in raising awareness to human trafficking.
Thank you. George Becerra speaking on the McLean High School facility sponsorship.
Good evening, Dr. Lockhart and Superintendent Lockhart and school board members. Yes, I will be talking about the McLean High School sponsorship policy. I will keep on track and not veer away. One thing that captured me about this, not much into this whole sponsorship policy, but one thing I saw with the board docs, it started off as consent agenda, then it got moved to action item, then it got moved to new business. The question I have is, when was it presented, even as presented as consent agenda action item at our last board meeting? I thought the policy was, or your practice was, it's presented. So somewhere it got changed, unless there was an administrative error over here by the clerk of the board, which I don't think. So next time, maybe, how did this come about? You know, that's where you get the questions of transparency, things brought up in the proper procedure, and da-da-da. One aspect also, too, I'm going to ask for to defer on this decision for a vote whenever it comes up. Another reason is because the policy you're going to review or confirm at this governance meeting on Thursday. I've never seen where you review a policy after you brought it up as new business. Unless this is a new precedence, you know, why not discuss it and then come back? I'm not saying don't vote on it, but let's do it in a proper order, because then you get people back here saying procedures haven't been followed and they're correct. Another aspect is people in the community said, is this an equity issue? I don't know right now. But what I need to ask out of my board members is the three members that have skipped, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Darren Kofax, who's not here, and Ms. Palchek, is this pass what the one Fairfax resolution and the skipped had advertised or had advocated for many years, plus at the same time Dr. Lipp and Mr. Plattenberg over there. I just want to make sure that this is going through that vetting of one Fairfax resolution and equity. As this year, as we talk about things that are coming up in the next couple months, and I make my rounds, as you know, I've already talked with Supervisor Smith, Supervisor Cook today, Supervisor Stork Saturday, Supervisor Hudgens next week, Chairman Bulova, and Supervisor McKay, Harity, and Faust on the way. I just want to make sure that both county boards are doing their job in this resolution. Another aspect I remember hearing, and maybe Ms. Carrick Corbett-Sanders can help me out. I remember a couple of years ago you had mentioned about the equity in terms of resources within our county and a map. Where is that? It started with Dr. Dale, Dr. Garza, now Dr. Lockhart is on board, and whoever the new superintendent is. Is that out on the FCPS website in terms of where, or did you ever get that? Because you were an advocate for that. So why not? I'm not blaming on you, you're just new. But those questions that come back to the sponsorship policy. I am not fighting for people who going out into the community to get businesses. What I'm trying to do is equitable distribution of parts of our county that some of my people say lack of resources leads to segregation. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ruby Nickdow, speaking on the human trafficking resolution.
Too high. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I think we can all agree that human trafficking, and especially teen sex trafficking, is a crime that should not be tolerated in our community, and that our children need to be protected from being victims of this type of abuse. It involves the exploitation of children to harmful conditions. But this is exactly what the school board is doing to innocent children in the public schools with their family sex education. Dr. Angel's psychoanalytic look at today's sex education shows the harms done to students with these sex ed classes. And I quote, "A salient psychoanalytic sexual fact is that in humans, the sexual instinct is composed of two parts, an affectionate part and a physical part. The affectionate component of the sexual instinct in humans is as important, if not more so, than the physical component. For human sexuality to be complete, there must be a confluence, a coming together of the affectionate and physical components of the sexual instinct. When the affectionate needs are weakened and physical sex is all that remains, sex becomes meaningless and life becomes empty. Sex education programs from kindergarten through high school continuously downgrade the intimate, affectionate, monogamous nature of human sexuality. When the sex educators purposely intend to do so or not, their sex teachings act, nevertheless, to desensitize students to the spiritual quality of human sexuality. In addition, every teaching technique known is used to break down the students' mental barriers of shame, disgust, and morality. There are natural inborn mental dams that control base sexual urges. It should be emphasized that a most important psychoanalytic finding that has been observed over and over again show that every adult pervert is a product of premature sexual seduction in early childhood. This is true whether the seduction is due to actual attacks by a child molester or by seduction that is due to overexposures to sexual activities in sex classrooms or the pornographic media. Psychiatrist Dr. Richard Bloom reports that the dramatic rise in teen suicides can be directly attributed to sex. Teaching youths an over-tolerance for perverts and an acceptance of the belief that sexual climax achieved by any means is beneficial can lead young people into becoming polymorphous perverts. That is, mechanical robots capable of engaging in any kind of sex acts with indifference and without guilt. These are the characteristics of prostitutes and pimps. One concern I have is, does the teen sex prevention curriculum mentioned in the resolution on human trafficking contain sexual explicit material? If it does, it needs to be eliminated along with the family sex education to prevent the vulnerability of our children from being victims of human sex trafficking. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Carol Hackinson, speaking also on the human trafficking resolution. Is Carol Hackinson here? And the next speakers are Kristen Wilkinson, to be followed by John Murray, to be followed by Mike Nee. If you would like to move down to be ready, that would be fine. Ms. Hackinson?
My name is Carol Hackinson, and I wasn't planning on speaking. I support your human trafficking resolution, but I also want you to understand the drug trafficking that goes in there, okay? We're not doing enough in our school systems about drugs. I lost my son 7 years ago, and a lot of it has to do with not teaching these kids what is really important if they even take one pill. You know, these kids go out to parties and they think they can just take a pill and everything will be fine. They won't do it again. But they can't stop because it is so addicting. We need to do more for our kids about drugs. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kristen Wilkinson.
Hello. I have 4 children in FCPS schools. I first want to thank the board for your attention to the horror of human trafficking in Fairfax County. The facts stated in your resolution are not widely known, and I ask that you share this information with parents in the county, as I have never received information directly, as well as what you do for the children. I only became aware of the district's concern about sex trafficking when reviewing the FLE curriculum. And let me take the opportunity to thank you for making the FLE materials available to us as parents. FCPS produced a video about sex trafficking that's shown starting in the 6th grade. I know it's well-intentioned, but this video, watched by children who have barely been taught the basics of human reproduction, talks about topics such as stripping, being drugged and raped, and being forced to have sex with 30 customers a day. Then ends with this ominous message, "You are the target." Nowhere in the video is there instruction to the children on what they should do to avoid being targets of human trafficking. I ask that this video be remade at a level more appropriate for the younger grades or removed from the sex trafficking lessons for these younger ages. Age appropriateness is unfortunately a problem in much of the FLE curriculum. Younger and younger children are taught more and more about the dirty underbelly of our sexually obsessed culture before they can even make any sense of it. The lessons have become a weird mix of bare-bones reproduction information, a nod to abstinence, and an out-of-proportion amount of time spent on abuse, STDs, alternate sex practices, and sex trafficking. The curriculum has taken something that is significant, beautiful, and worth waiting for, and turned it into something frightening, dirty, criminal, and disease-bearing. The curriculum needs to be reviewed and pared down significantly. Finally, I would like to address Policy 1450. It is difficult to understand why everyone is unanimously concerned about the grooming of children by sex traffickers, but not simultaneously concerned about the potential risk to students of sharing shower and locker room facilities with the opposite gender. My question for you is this: is the discomfort of a student using a bathroom and locker facility where they don't feel they belong a valid concern? If so, then finding an accommodation for the transgendered students under our care is important. But if discomfort in changing in front of someone of the perceived opposite gender is a valid concern for the transgendered student, then it must also be a valid concern for the students who aren't. The Policy 1450 solution to the first problem, allowing transgendered students access to the facilities of their choice, causes the same problem of discomfort for a much greater number of students. It is not an acceptable solution. You cannot validate discomfort because of perceptions on the one hand and then discount it as prejudice on the other. Policy 1450, as it stands now, must be rejected. I ask you to recognize that the approach to sexual issues in the district, from sex trafficking to the FLE curriculum to transgender policies, need careful, open discussion, response from the school board that we can understand, and finally, revision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Murray on the human trafficking resolution.
Good evening, members of the school board, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. The human trafficking resolution talks about the Fairfax County School Board's efforts to combat teen sex trafficking. One way this is done is through the family life education curriculum. You can improve both the resolution and the FLE curriculum. The home connection is a letter parents get after their child has been taught particularly intense or explicit information, including sex trafficking. Parents get the home connection after the lesson is taught. They should get the home connection before their child is exposed to such explicit materials. By getting the home connection after the lesson, parents find out what their child has been taught too late to prepare them for the information, and too late if their parents believe their child is not ready for such lessons. I'm not saying children should not know about teen sex trafficking, only that parents are in the best position to determine their child's readiness to be exposed to such materials. One obvious example would be children who have already been victims of sex trafficking. No parent whose child has been a victim of sex trafficking would want their child to go into a class about sex trafficking without advanced preparation, if at all. Fairfax County schools can't be expected to know which children have been victims of sex trafficking, but if parents know their child has been a victim, telling them before the lesson could help save their child from a traumatic experience. Many other children, I don't know who they are, but their parents do, are simply not at a level of emotional maturity to handle such explicit information at the grade level at which it is taught. Can the parents of such children find a way to help their child avoid being exploited? Yes, it's what parents do. If you think I'm exaggerating the importance of getting the home connection before the lesson, let me read an excerpt from the Introduction to Grade 8, Emotional and Social Health Issues. Teacher note, information on the sensitive topic of human trafficking is included in this lesson. Prior to teaching the lesson, teachers may want to consult with school counselors, psychologists, or social workers to provide support to students. If the material is so sensitive that teachers consult with counselors, psychologists, and social workers before it is taught, shouldn't parents get a heads up too? Once again, the material is so sensitive that counselors, psychologists, and social workers should be consulted before it is taught. But parents get a letter after the lesson is taught, after any emotional damage has already been done. I ask you, why? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Neese, speaking on the McLean High School facility sponsorship.
When I select the screen, given the wrong selection, I will talk about human trafficking.
Beg your pardon? I didn't hear that.
Okay, when I sign up, use my smartphone, the cell phone gave me the wrong selection.
Oh, you wanted to speak on human trafficking. That's fine, Mr. Need. Go right ahead. Sometimes it does that.
Fat fingers. All right. Good night, everybody. Human trafficking is a widespread issue, both in the United States, where I'm a citizen of, and also in China, where I was born from. My friend who lives in Fairfax took his son to China in the summer vacation. In the busy train station, he lost his son. She came back heartbroken, helpless, totally mentally broken down. The silver line news is yesterday, China passed a law. Human trafficking could face death penalty. I don't think we are in authority. We are not the United Nations General Assembly. We're not Interpol. Why not a school board? We focus on what can we prevent that happening. CNN have this chart. In 2015, the international ranking for Program of International Students Assessment, United States ranked number 25 in terms of mathematics, lagging behind Vietnam, Korea, Taiwan, and some other places. This is humiliating. Our school board should spend time to put the kids out of trouble, out of the instant satisfaction, out of allurement, focus on the core, which is education. This year, 2016, the rank was getting worse, which is number 31 out of 35 OECD countries. So this is, as a parent, I'm concerned. As a community, we are concerned. And the school board, you should do something. Education is our core to put the kids out of trouble into the real safe environment, stay with good people with faith, with people with conviction. When we debate the sex identity while other countries' students are learning math, when we decide our students receive 36 hours of sex education while the kids in Singapore are doing programming and coding, that's why we're lagging behind. I strongly believe in our 2017, we have a new school superintendent. We should focus on the core mission of our county education, which is student-centered benefits. And also, I want our money, resources to spend on the real issue, which is education, not sexuality. Lastly, I want you to reconsider the infamous and the notorious 1450, to put the money in the real need, and otherwise our students will be lagging behind further and further. The last 80 years, our educational policy is racing to the top by Obama, but now we're racing to the bottom. We need to revert back and make our Americans' education great again. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have one video by Jeff Grames on the topic of the McLean High School facility sponsorship.
Executive Board. I'm here tonight to discuss the naming rights agenda in front of you that includes FHFER, Fairfax County Public Schools, as well as McLean High School, and also to encourage you to approve it. This whole process started in September of 2015 when the McLean administration came to us and expressed a dire need to replace 3 failing scoreboards. How are we going to get that done? We started a corporate sponsorship program that same year. In December of 2015, FHFER came on as one of our corporate sponsors. In March of 2016, they expressed an interest in giving even more. In April of 2016, they submitted an outline for what they would consider a reasonable naming rights deal. We got Dr. Garza involved. We discussed the naming rights deal with board member Jane Strauss. We discussed Regulation 8170 as a viable option to execute the naming rights deal. This all culminated with a November 4th naming rights deal that we returned to FCPS with minor modifications, and that's where we are at this point. I think it's important to stress that McLean High School, the McLean High School boosters, the corporate sponsorship committee led by Glenn Goldenhorn has spent in excess of 1,000 hours cultivating our corporate sponsorship program as well as our relationship with FH-FUR. As for FH-FUR, you can look online, you can talk to a lot of people. It's an incredibly well-respected company in the Northern Virginia region. One of their tenets is giving back to the community, and that's what they'd like to do here. They're involved with McLean High School, a lot of them, and as well as all the pyramid schools at McLean High School. I encourage you to go out to visit fhfurcares.com to see their vast community involvement. They've been very patient and unwavering in their support of McLean High School through this naming rights process. As for the specifics, it's a 10-year, $250,000 deal. We've done our due diligence. It's a very fair, more than fair market value for a naming rights deal to a high school stadium. The bottom line is McLean High School needs 3 new scoreboards. There's no parts available anymore for our existing scoreboards. We've gotten estimates from Daktronics and Fairfax County Public Schools for the installation. The total price exceeds $200,000. The $250,000 at $25,000 per year would more than suffice to get us to where we need to be. It's a 60-year-old school with a lot of modifications necessary. On behalf of McLean High School administration, I would strongly encourage you to approve this naming rights agenda tonight to help us along our way. Thank you.
All right, and that finishes our citizen participation. Next, we turn to item 3.02, the fiscal year 2018 proposed budget, and I call on Dr. Lockhart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the board. We are going to start with a very short video. So I'm going to ask for the video to be queued, and then we will present the proposed budget.
Dreams come true here.
It's their first day, it's my first day, and I'm just really excited to be here.
It's a wonderful place to learn. It's a wonderful place to work.
You will find that feeling of community, that sense of love and welcoming.
We will get the skills needed to be in a professional environment.
I see the joy on the faces of the kids. I see the hard work of the teachers and the parents. And who wouldn't want to be a part of that?
Not many schools have this, so I think we're pretty lucky.
They're building relationships. They're really learning to communicate with each other and collaborate in the classroom.
Deliver the most powerful instruction and reach children.
Oftentimes we gather inspiration from our students.
Kids wake up every morning excited to come to school. They're engaged in the work that they're doing.
Our job here is to make sure our students achieve as much as possible.
What we look to develop is a positive school climate.
I just mostly feel like I'm incredibly lucky to work with these teachers and to work with these kids who make me be the best that I can be.
And if you walk out of here wanting to come back, I think we can say we've done our job.
Okay, great video. Truly inspiring to see the amazing work that happens each and every day in FCPS. I'm proud to serve today as the voice of our 28,000 employees and our more than 188,000 students. This is an awesome school system, and I'm proud to have the opportunity to serve as interim superintendent. Before we begin, I'd like to take just a couple of moments to say thank you to the team that helped put the proposed budget together. Certainly Susan Quinn, Kristen Michael, Alice Wigington, and the entire financial services team. They have worked tirelessly over the last several months to help prepare this budget. I also want to thank the leadership team for their input and participation, and certainly the school board members who have come to meet with us to discuss the proposed budget, and certainly Ms. Darnat Koufax and Mr. Moon as budget chair and vice chair. All of your ideas were extremely helpful, and we thank you. Today I'll be presenting to you what I believe are the resources necessary to ensure we are able to maintain the continued excellence we all expect from Fairfax County Public Schools. We talked a lot about the importance of keeping our teacher pay competitive in the Washington metro area. As part of our strategic plan, specifically Goal 3, Premier Workforce, we commissioned a study to find out how teacher salaries in Fairfax County Public Schools are lagging behind and to learn how to best address the problem. Before I begin speaking about dollar amounts and numbers and statistics, I want to remind the board and the community there are people behind all these figures. And it's our people, specifically our teachers and staff, who work with our students each and every day, who have the potential to make the biggest difference in the life of a student. And that's what we're here for. One example of a terrific classroom teacher is Corey Thornblad. Corey teaches social studies at Kilmer Middle School, and she's known for having extraordinary rapport and connections with her students. She makes history come alive for her students through living reenactments such as the Oklahoma Land Rush, an immigrant family entering the U.S. via Ellis Island, and being on the front lines in World War I. By having her students experience these events, they get a first-hand look at history and are able to better understand the obstacles people had to overcome. Corey is a believer in putting her students first. She teaches students at all levels in a classroom that's a safe, caring place where all feel accepted and valued. As a teacher, Corey's goal is to have her students want to learn more about the past, present, and future, and continue to be learners of history throughout their lives. Her golden rule is to teach and care for students the way she would want her own students, her own children, to be taught, with kindness, compassion, purpose, vision, and creativity. For all these reasons, it's not surprising we honored her with our 2016 Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award. In fact, Corey is here with us this evening. Thank you, Corey. We're so fortunate to have Corey and thousands of other extraordinary teachers and staff just like her, teaching our students every day in FCPS. Keeping this cadre of outstanding teachers and the ability to attract new ones must be a priority for us. To lose Corey or any of our great teachers to another school system for a higher salary would be unfortunate. To not be able to even attract teachers like Corey to our system is even greater concern. Yet, this has been occurring in FCPS over the past several years. And as you're aware, we've struggled to fill teacher vacancies at the beginning of the last several years. So this is critical to us because when it comes to achieving the aspirational outcomes defined in our strategic plan and the work we've done with Portrait of a Graduate, exceptional teachers are paramount to our success. In Fairfax County Public Schools, we continually challenge ourselves to harness a pedagogy that engages our students, inspires them, and helps them thrive in life. We're a national leader in enhancing learning in a manner that ensures our students are equipped with the 21st century skills critical to succeed in a global society. When I visit our schools, I'm always energized by how our teachers are creating engaging environments in which students become so inspired in the learning. We've seen snippets of that here in front of us in performances and in the videos we've seen, the video we saw this evening. This is evident also when you see students actively collaborating in schools on projects and problems with real-world applicability. When our teachers engage young learners with capstone projects, portfolios, exhibitions of student work, we are a catalyst for success. We structured our strategic plan, Ignite, to ensure consistency in and equitable access to these powerful types of learning environments. We must work together as a community of educators and learners to provide the support necessary for the success of all of our students. This requires commitment by leaders at all levels to understand the why of our budget priorities and the critical investment necessary for success. So tonight, our budget proposal is based on a simple approach. We must ensure we meet the basic needs of the school system and make continued investment in our teachers and staff and in our classrooms in critical areas. It's my responsibility, while recognizing the current fiscal environment, to propose a budget that meets our school's needs. As such, this budget reflects only what we believe most crucial to sustain the excellence we expect in FCPS. The community's investment in education continues to show high dividends as it strengthens the fabric of our community. FCPS is efficient and effective with its resources, but faces challenges to meet and exceed the expectations of all of our stakeholders. As we look at FY18 and future years' budgets, it's clear we face uncertainty with the sustainability of the funding necessary to support our schools. It's essential that we take a long-term view of our budget because FCPS has already taken historic reductions since 2008, totaling more than $500 million, including the elimination of nearly 2,200 positions. As part of the strategic plan, Goal 4, Resource Stewardship, long-term options for savings and efficiencies are continually considered by FCPS. Ongoing activities included targeted reviews to achieve potential efficiencies, identification of potential savings and flexibility available to increase effectiveness, and the promotion of the value of FCPS's programs and activities by providing education and outreach. We have engaged in a review of programs and services with a focus on long-term sustainability, including our retirement and health benefits. We'll continue to work with the board and our funding partners at the county and state to advocate that everyone do their part to support FCPS. Our FY18 proposed budget for the school operating fund is $2.8 billion. This is an increase of $130.4 million, or 4.9% over the FY17 approved budget. The FY18 proposed budget focuses on two key priorities right from our strategic plan, and that is employee compensation and classroom resources. It's important to note as we look at this slide that instruction remains more than 85% of our budget. And so looking at that a little bit different way, 89% of our operating fund is for personnel, and more than 9 out of 10 of our staff are based in schools. We also face continued cost drivers in enrollment growth, retirement, and health insurance. And so over the next few slides, I'm going to explain these expenditure increases in a little more detail. As outlined here and guided by the strategic plan, our number one priority is always students. To support them, we need great teachers. This budget proposal focuses on employee compensation with an emphasis on our teachers. To support this priority, I propose funding of $44 million for an average step increase of 2.5% for all eligible employees. Today, I also propose we continue to make the investments in our teachers we began last year and to move our teachers closer to the market average. In order to mitigate some of that annual cost, I'm proposing a 4-year implementation to get our teachers to market average. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. The FY18 investment in our new teacher scale totals $33 million. The new scale includes the market scale adjustment. Additionally, we must support all of our employees who provide critical service to the operation of our schools, from our principals to our social workers to our custodial staff. Based on the compensation study, placeholder funding of $14.9 million is included to implement new non-teacher salary scales, including an average market scale adjustment of 1%. New scales are being proposed for school-based administrators, classroom instructional support positions, and unified scale positions, again, all based on market averages. As I mentioned, to fully close the gap for our teachers and to bring them up to the average market salary requires multiple years of investment by FCPS. This investment will further reduce the gap to the market average and accounts for market shifts based on anticipated salary increases provided by surrounding school districts. For FY18, funding of $33.2 million is requested, and this represents funding approximately 1/4 of the total projected cost to reach the desired teacher compensation level. So with this level of investment over each of the next 4 years, FCPS anticipates fully implementing the new scale by FY21. If you recall in the fiscal forecast, we included a 3-year implementation, but recognizing the current fiscal environment, believe it would be prudent to stretch that out over 4 years. Providing fair compensation for teachers who are at the heart of our mission is a significant priority in this budget, and I believe there's no more important investment we can make. FCPS began investing in teacher salaries in FY17, targeting steps with the greatest gap to the market average. Even with that investment, FCPS teacher salaries still lag behind the market average. Clearly, our work is not finished. As you can see from the chart, the investment I'm recommending does improve teacher salaries, but FCPS will still fall below the market average. FCPS's proposed future teacher scale targets career earnings to be within 95 and 105% of the market average. Again, the FY implementation plan proposed represents 1/4 of the commitment to reach the desired salary scales. While the graph shows the impact of allocating the FY18 investment equally, the investment could again be used to close the largest gaps with the market, but we must continue investing in teacher pay. Beyond our teacher investment, we also have critical needs in our classroom identified by our strategic plan goal of student success. First, as part of our investment in early childhood education, the budget includes an increase of $500,000 to support the local match requirement necessary to receive federal and state funding in support of our current preschool programming. Second, a new $2.7 million investment is needed for the adoption of social studies textbooks. Third, funding of $2.4 million is needed for an assessment tool that we call the Universal Screener. This tool will enhance our ability to track student progress in the development of essential literacy and numeracy skills. Results from the Universal Screener pilot have shown great promise in providing teachers with the timely information needed to make important instructional decisions regarding when to give students additional support or accelerate their learning. In addition, the screener assists teachers with the early identification of special needs and students requiring math or reading intervention, including dyslexia. Lastly, operational resources of $3.7 million are required for student safety and to maintain ongoing operational costs. Additional cost drivers in the FY18 budget include required increases of $51.2 million. Enrollment projections have been completed for the proposed budget and include growth of 1,932 students as compared to the FY17 approved budget. This results in the need for an additional $10 million. I'll discuss this in more detail in just a minute. Beyond enrollment, there are required employer contribution rates for all of the retirement plans. First, a required contribution increase of $25.5 million for the Virginia retirement system. Second, the ERFC employer contribution rate is projected to increase for FY18. The impact of the rate increase results in additional expenditures of $11.4 million. This increase is offset by savings of $4.7 million from proposed plan benefit modifications, resulting in a net increase of $6.7 million. Third, the FCERS employer contribution rate is also projected to increase. This rate increases results in an additional expenditure of $4.3 million. The budget includes an increase of $4.7 million for employee health insurance. As is the trend nationally, FCPS continues to experience rising healthcare costs. Rate increases for FCPS medical plans were mitigated by cost containment measures, including a new pharmacy benefit contract. I'd like now to review a little bit more about enrollment costs. To calculate the cost of enrollment and demographic adjustments, FCPS staffing standards approved by the school board are applied annually to each school's projections. The $10 million cost of enrollment and demographic changes is the result of those 1,932 projected additional students I told you about. This includes increased costs for special education services, offset by a reduction in costs due to a decrease in English for speakers of other language services. It's important to note, as we do every year, FCPS recalculates the enrollment projections and school staffing prior to the final budget adoption based on updated figures. We'll now turn to the revenue side of our proposed budget. Because of the state funding formula, FCPS receives less state funding than other Virginia jurisdictions, which creates a greater and unavoidable reliance on local funding. As such, FCPS is relying on the Fairfax County General Fund transfer to provide $2 billion, or 72.2% of total revenue. The requested increase of $108 million, or 5.7%, in the county transfer is required to fund our basic needs, including the two key investments I've outlined for you: employee compensation and classroom resources. FCPS's next largest source of revenue, $631 million, which is 22.5%, comes from the state in the form of state aid and sales tax revenue. On average, other Virginia jurisdictions receive nearly 46% of their operating revenue from the state. There are additional smaller sources of funding, including federal, which is less than 2% of our total, tuition and fees, and the budgeted beginning balances and reserves. So now let's take a look at the state. Governor McAuliffe proposed amendments to the state's budget on December 16th. Due to the timing of the governor's budget, and because it's not final, this funding is not included in this proposed budget. The proposed adjustments result in a net increase of approximately $3 million in state aid above FCPS's FY18 proposed budget. Major changes included in his proposal were a decrease in sales tax, the elimination of the 2% compensation supplement, and a one-time 1.5% bonus. Please understand, this FCPS budget proposal has incorporated the governor's salary proposals. Also of note, the governor's proposal includes no change to the acceleration of the VRS, employer contribution rate, and other state-mandated benefit rates. The state budget will be finalized in March, and will recommend adjustments to state aid and sales tax revenue projections prior to the adoption of the FY18 approved budget in May. Now we'll talk about the county contribution. As we discussed earlier, FCPS receives the majority of its funding from local funds in the form of a transfer from Fairfax County government. FCPS does not have taxing authority and must rely on the County Board of Supervisors for funding. The county transfer request of $2 billion reflects an increase of $108 million, or 5.7% from last year. As you can see from this chart, the request is in line with past budgets, and again, this budget seeks an increase to meet required expenditures and key strategic plan priorities. We recognize that the county continues to have challenges in raising revenue and that the failure of the meals tax inhibits their ability to diversify their sources of funds. However, it's important to note that a recent study by economist Stephen Fuller, that you heard right here at a board meeting, found that FCPS accounts for 4.1% of the countywide employment base and accounts for 2% of the gross county product, making FCPS the second largest source of economic activity in the county following the federal government. The bottom line here is that investment made in our schools are investments made in our entire community. While we rely heavily on our county funding partners, we continue to advocate for any solution that would lessen the local impact. One critical solution for FY18 would be for the state to return to the original VRS schedule. The net savings to FCPS would be $21.5 million. The net change of $3 million I mentioned earlier of additional funding included in the governor's budget and the VRS savings of $21.5 million could result in a reduction to the county transfer request of $24.9 million. These changes could lower the county transfer need to $83.3 million, or a transfer increase of 4.4%. I want to reiterate, the budget is a proposal for FCPS's basic needs guided by our strategic plan, employee compensation, and classroom resources. And of course, we must cover the cost drivers. Additional funding is needed from the county and state if FCPS is to continue supporting our students' basic requirements and meet the commitment to salary enhancements, enabling FCPS to attract and retain the highest quality teachers. Without increasing revenue, FCPS will not be able to address employee compensation and sustain the current quality nor the full range of academic programming currently offered to students. We only need to look at recent history to understand the impact of a shortfall of revenue. As I mentioned previously, since 2008, we've taken historic reductions totaling more than $500 million. We've taken reductions across all areas of FCPS. This includes class size increases, reductions in school-based support, including assistant principals, counselors, psychologists and social workers, clerical and custodial, as well as significant department reductions. We've eliminated, reduced, or redesigned a number of programs, including special education preschool, summer school, activities, athletics, and needs-based staffing, just to name a few. In addition, we've hit our teachers and staff hard over the past years. Due to limited available resources, annual compensation increases have been restricted, which has resulted in the lagging salaries. When compared to the 9 other school divisions included in the FY17 WABE Guide, FCPS ranks 5th in terms of starting teacher salaries and 6th in terms of a mid-year teacher. As career teachers advance in FCPS, they tend to earn less relative to their counterparts in neighboring jurisdictions. These statistics are not heading in a sustainable direction to meet the aspirations of our strategic plan, the board, or our community. And we know this is just the beginning. So let's move from where we are to the ongoing budget process. While we propose today only what we think is necessary and critical for our schools, we recognize that we may not receive the funding we've requested. Because of this, FCPS may need to consider fee increases, as well as reducing, eliminating, and redesigning programs and services for the 2017-18 school year. With this in mind, we've taken proactive steps to examine the options available to the school system for the development of the FY18 budget. I believe the community voice is incredibly important to this process and critical. So to this end, I've reconvened the Budget Task Force to review and reprioritize original recommendations and identify other recommendations not on the original list. As you know, the Budget Task Force is a comprehensive list. The Budget Task Force report is a comprehensive list of potential fee increases and program reductions that were examined and vetted by the Superintendent's Budget Task Force during the development of last year's approved budget. Ongoing communication between FCPS's leadership team, school board members, and Fairfax County Board of Supervisors will continue to occur to address any potential budget gap. The next school board work session is scheduled for January 23rd on the budget and will include discussions regarding the recommendations from the reconvened Budget Task Force. In addition, the school board will hold upcoming public hearings. In keeping with Goal 4 resource stewardship, it's important to note that FCPS is already incredibly efficient and effective with our current revenue. FCPS's cost per pupil is a strong indicator of operational efficiency. In FY17, FCPS maintained its ranking right about in the middle of other school districts in the metropolitan area with a cost per pupil of $14,432. If Fairfax County had the same cost per pupil as Montgomery County, our budget would have been more than $289 million higher in 2017. I also think it's essential to point out that FCPS is one of the most efficient school divisions in the metro area. Another measure of accountability that you'll see here on the screen is the comparison of leadership and management positions to total positions across the school division. As shown in this chart, FCPS has the lowest percent of leadership and management positions to total positions as compared to neighboring school districts. Administrators, including the leadership team, directors, coordinators, represent less than 1% of total FCPS school operating fund positions. As I stated earlier, a little over 9 out of 10 staff are based in our schools, giving FCPS the highest percentage of school-based positions and the lowest percentage of non-school-based positions among the WABE school districts. Again, today's just the beginning of our dialogue. As I noted earlier, we'll have many opportunities for board discussion as well as input from our community. The dates are listed here as a reference and will certainly be advertised and listed on our website and other places for our community to see. Additionally, there are many ways for the public to engage in this process. Their voice and thoughts are critical as we continue to collaborate with our funding partners. We also have many resources on the website, as I mentioned, to assist citizens in becoming more informed about the FCPS budget. I encourage our parents, staff, community, take a moment to learn about the critical needs of this great school system and learn why we must continue to support our teachers, staff, and students. I'd like to conclude today by first thanking you, the school board. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as your interim superintendent of this amazing, awesome school system. It's an honor and a privilege to lead this group of hardworking, dedicated employees who, no matter what the challenge, always put our students first. Their commitment to the success of our students is unparalleled and a testament to the quality of the employees we have here in Fairfax County. As I mentioned earlier, FCPS is effective because of our people, teachers, administrators, support employees, all of whom contribute to the positive environment that makes it possible for every student to grow and thrive. Our community has confirmed time and again that our schools are a vital, valued, integral part of Fairfax County. From preschool programs that help give the youngest students a strong start on their education, to challenging academic programs that prepare students for college and beyond, to career and technical education offerings that provide apprenticeships and internships, to students heading directly into the workforce, to adult and community education classes that help lifelong learners adopt new skills and update existing ones, Fairfax County Public Schools is truly woven into the fabric of our community. Teachers like Corey Thornblad, they help make learning exciting and engaging for our students, and they inspire students to continue learning. An investment in excellent teachers like her is an investment in our community's most valuable potential, our children, and shapes a thriving future for us all. This is our FCPS, and working together, it is possible. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the possibilities ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. I want to remind everyone that we do have public hearings on this, that they start on January 30th, and the sign-up has opened already, so if people want to go online and sign up, or you can phone our school board office to sign up as well. We will have work sessions on January 23rd and February 2nd, and then we're scheduled to approve the advertised budget on February 9th. I do have people who have questions for Dr. Lockhart or comments. Ms. Huff.
At least you waited till
We'll
after
give Dr.
the
Lockhart
presentation.
1 minute to get back to his seat. Okay, Mrs. Huff.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lockhart, and thank you for agreeing to be interim superintendent during this budget season. That is no small task. So I do have a couple of questions on the PowerPoint that I just don't expect answers tonight, but maybe clarifications going forward to our work sessions. So first, on the page where you presented the teacher scales, which would be page 7, I was wondering if just to help a little bit with understanding, if we could have the presentation at the work session delineate out what the market scale adjustment included is for each of those sections. I think that would be helpful and important to see. I also would appreciate the non-teacher scale implementation of $14.9 million being delineated out into what, I know there's a few categories in there. I think that would be helpful to see as well. And then going forward to, I'm sorry, one more question on this page 7. You had mentioned the $33.2 million. Originally, that was 44.3 because we were looking at a 3-year implication, and this is the new number with the 4-year implementation. Okay. And then going forward to page 10, I guess I would like to know a little bit more about under operational resources. You had mentioned a significant amount for student safety. I would just like to hear more about that and what that is for. And then on page 20, so you mentioned class size increased 3 times for an increase of 1.5 to 2 students. However, since my time on the board, we have actually given money to reduce class sizes back. Is that 1.5 to 2 include that?
These were past reductions, so no.
Okay. Well, I think in the name maybe of a little bit more transparency, we should acknowledge the fact that over the last couple of years, we have reinfused dollars to continue with our priority of having low class sizes. I think that's just slightly misleading, but otherwise, I appreciate this and thank you very much. I'll look forward to talking about it Although to my colleagues, I'll probably be emailing you since I will be out of town for the work session on the budget. So thank you.
Ms. Hines?
Yeah, thank you. I also had just a couple of questions, which, again, we can have answered later. Thank you. I noticed that the VRS accelerated payment, I think it is listed as two different numbers on here, but I'm not sure. On page 11, it looks like it's listed as $25.5 million, and then on page 17, it's $21.5, and I'm just wondering, is there a reason for that?
There is, and I know that Ms. Michael does a much better job of explaining it than I do, but I'll give it a shot, and then she'll be able to fill in all the technical pieces. It has to do with the state's share of the contribution, and there's a total amount of 25, but we would only regain 21 if that were deferred back to the original timeline. Ms. Michael?
Yes, so when the state increases the expenditure employer rate for the Virginia retirement system, it results in increased expenditures for FCPS, but it also results in increased revenue as the state pays their share of that cost for the SOQ funded positions. So in the event that the state defers that acceleration, we'll see that expenditure reduced, but we'll also see that revenue reduced. So that net savings is $21.5 million.
Thank you. That makes sense. Also, the pre-K amount of $500,000, I think this is the first time I'm seeing this, but I'm not sure. Is that, and I can take this question later, how that is related to the joint strategic work that the two boards, the school board and the county board and staff are doing on closing the kindergarten readiness gap? I assume it's part of that work?
No, it's not. That's the increasing costs of all the other pieces that we included here, like compensation and health care and et cetera, to continue to make sure that we fund our share to meet the state's requirement. And again, I'll look to, oh, she's shaking her head, yes.
Okay, so that $500,000 is not actually adding any seats?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's to continue to do business.
Okay, thank you. And just one last question. The meals tax, had it passed, would have brought in about $68 million to the school system. Isn't that right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're short that much, and that would certainly help. Thank you.
Yes, it would.
Mr. Wilson? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, was it you? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Ms. McLaughlin?
I wonder if the light, our seating is, oh, I tipped your light.
I know, we moved this
way. Oh, okay. All right. Still getting used to our lights. So a couple questions. Just to refresh my colleagues' memory, last May, you all passed one of my budget amendments. And that amendment had said that this board directed the superintendent in the fall of 2016 to include a discussion of potential reductions that require decisions early in the budget process to ensure adequate time to engage the community and provide appropriate notification and planning time to implement these reductions for fall 2018 if necessary. And I'm a little concerned because that was 8 months ago. We didn't do it in the fall. And now we've got a proposed budget here, and I'm trying to figure out how we don't keep repeating the same challenge we have, which is that if we don't give enough notice to our employees and our community about what potentially we might need to reduce from our budget if we can't get fully funded, then in the past what's happened is we tend to reduce any pay increases. And so I just thought it would be really appropriate to kind of bring it to everybody's attention now, because I really do hope this will be an important part of our discussion at the work session. We really need to at least start that dialogue. And so it's sort of, wanted to make sure everybody's aware of it, because well, I very much believe, Dr. Lockhart, that everything you've laid out in the budget in terms of where we have increased costs are all very important key pieces to having a strong school system. So I respect what you've given to us. But I am very mindful of the fiscal forecast that we've received from the county executive, Ed Long, and our request of a 5.7% transfer as of now, we know will be very challenging from what the county forecast is. I'm very hopeful that the state and the General Assembly will do the right thing and restore the original payments structure for the VRS, and that will take some pressure off our budget and off the county fiscal needs. But I did want to ask, in terms of the budget task force, and I think this will help us going into the work session, how will we be utilizing that menu of options that they deliberated on last year and help inform our board's conversation going into the work session on the 23rd? Because it's my sense that even though many of us believe that this is a needs-based budget you've put in front of us, we do still have to have some honest conversation with our public and our supervisors of what we're looking at. And so I was wondering if you could maybe speak just briefly about, so that we're prepared going into the work session on how might we utilize that list of options that was from last year and how you're using that in your work with us.
Sure. Great question. Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd recommend that if the board hasn't done it in a while, to go back and take a look at the report and recommendations that were provided last year after 6 months of work. The task force, as I mentioned, is re-examining those recommendations and that work from last year and the priorities that they put forward, as well as any additional recommendations. I had little control over the transition time as I've been here. However, soon after being in the interim position, I quickly asked the task force to reconvene. So they've been working very hard over the last short amount of time. They continue to work. And so I have to give them that time. I recognize time is a factor. And they will be working feverishly up until our school board work session. We're going to do our best to get to you the information, although I know they are working almost right up to our work session to create any adjustments or new recommendations that we can give to you. The idea then will be, as a board, to start to re-examine those pieces, to come to some discussion points on what's priority for us, what do we believe we can do or can't do, or how do we go about doing that. And so I don't have the agenda to provide to you yet today, but I know that group is continuing that work so that we can get you any updated revisions, new information to provide. But a great place to start would be the work they did last year. We want to be as transparent and communicating everything as much as we can. So as soon as we get that information, I hope it's prior to the work session that we can share the structure. We're continuing to kind of work on that. How do we best want to structure that time so we can really use it to our advantage? It's 4 hours, I believe, on that day. It probably could be 8 hours or 10 hours, right? But we'll provide that to you as well.
And I did want to just note that one example from last year's budget task force menu of choices for cost reductions had to do with closing some schools over the summer where we weren't running programs, and that could save up to $500,000, $500,000. But what I remember in May when we talked about utilizing that was there wasn't any time now to consider that cut because we hadn't notified the county programs and planned for those buildings. So I just want to kind of utilize that as an example for everybody that might be something that we determine. We've got 200 buildings. We've got enough that we go ahead and do some of that preemptively and regardless of our transfer, that just might be where we could be more efficient and put 500,000 toward pre-K or, staffing for lowering class size. So I do still hope we'll do some of that. And I do also want to give advance notice to Dr. Lockhart and my colleagues that I am going to be asking for information about our substitute pay. Again, I know that some of us have been asking about that along the way, the changes we made and the impact it's had this year in our schools for getting quality substitute teachers, and the fact that we have different substitute pay for substitute social workers, assistant principals, and I think it's important that maybe we look holistically about how we have those hourly rates to our substitute positions so that we ensure our teachers reflect the level of professionalism that they bring in a temporary or substitute status.
Mr. Moon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, a compliment to Interim Superintendent Dr. Locker. You did a wonderful job, not only presenting to us, but even prior to presentation to the school board and to the public through TV, that I know that you had reached out to a chairman and also a budget committee chair of the County Board of Supervisors. Ultimately, most of our funding comes from County Board of Supervisors, and reaching out to those two supervisors and also county executive. I mean, it's a kudos to you. And I also attended, this morning, when you were briefing employee organizations, and there were quite a few, representatives from various different organizations in attendance, listening to your presentation. That was very well done too, and thank you for doing that. As pointed out, we have a work session scheduled. I understand I'm only the vice chair of the budget committee, but since Mr. Fairfax, our budget committee chair, is not here, I'm just making that announcement to you again. Just reminding board members that we have set aside 4 hours on 23rd to have an in-depth discussion of the proposed budget, and so we do not have to ask all the questions tonight. So save some of the questions for 23rd, and if you can, send in your question in advance. And as far as that follow-on motion, budget amendment from the last year, that was a very good point. If I can speak, if I can maybe speculate why that was not done in the fall time frame, was that most of us on the board were hoping that meals tax would pass, then we would be having a complete different discussion. That is why we waited until the election to take place first to find out what was going to happen to a meals tax referendum before we do talk about making potentially serious cuts. But that may have to happen. So we are going to have that. Start having that discussion on Monday, June 23rd, and I believe that since, as Mrs. McLaughlin pointed out, if you are going to make any cuts, some of the work need to be done sooner than later. We cannot wait until May time frame. That staff will be prepared to come to the board at the work session of the list of potential expenditure adjustments that board may need to consider and give us some guidance to staff. If necessary, they can start working on making adjustments right away, because some of the things that you pointed out cannot wait until May, June time frame for us to expect to be implemented. So with that said, I have just one specific question on that $33.2 million included in Dr. Lockhart's proposed budget for a teacher compensation enhancement. I know this was asked by Mrs. Janet Huff too, but if you could tell us, I think because I believe the staff has that information, that what part of that is a market scale adjustment using 1% market scale
Of that amount, 14.2 million represents a 1% market scale adjustment.
So remaining is about $19 million. You know, if you were to convert that to market scale, what's the percentage of that?
So with each 1% of a market scale adjustment being 14 million, right, that would be probably 1.3%.
1.3%. So that, I mean, to me, that additional 1.3 million, 1.3% of adjustment, so that we could, you know, hopefully in 3 or 4 year time frame to reach the market average, is very modest. Because, you know, public may not understand what 33.2 million means, but that is, in all honesty, that's only 1.3% above typical market scale adjustment of 1%. I just want that information to be out in public tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Palchik?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moon. I think that was a good context that you were giving. Dr. Lockhart, thank you for the presentation. Sorry that you were hurried into this and such a hopefully not depressing year, but it could be discouraging. And I do really want to thank you for reconvening that budget task force. Last night, we actually had a chance to meet with my representative and representatives from several of my PTA groups who were giving feedback, and we went through the line items. And so one thing that came up was as we go through that and as we present the recommendations from the task force, I don't know if they are planning this, but many of them asked for us to provide context on what those line items mean, how they actually affect our classrooms. I did the best I could do, hopefully did not do it at this service, meeting with them, but to really, you know, explain what changing a staffing formula means, what changing, you know, the floor means for our schools and for our classrooms. I think many found it helpful to understand, you know, the true impact of that. So it's not just a number, as you said.
I think that's a critical piece, right? There are lots of things behind a number. And so having the context
right.
and the, you know, understanding of what does that mean?
Right.
What does it mean in our schools, for our students, for programming, is important. So that'll be included.
Thank you. Included on that, I know we've had separate work sessions on the ERFC, but I think the public still has some question, confusion about what it means, you know, what that plan means, what would happen, what is the, you know, short-term and long-term impact if we were to make changes to that. I think there's still some misunderstanding that, you know, that can be fully changed for next year. And so if anything around that comes up when it's presented, if we could just provide a little bit, I guess, a little debrief from what we learned from the ERFC session in the wider budget discussion, because that seems to come up quite often.
Sure, and I believe that's also an agenda topic on the January 19th work session.
Okay.
So.
It's just January 19th in the evening.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, and look forward to asking more questions at the work session.
Mrs. Corbett-Sanders.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Lockhart. You certainly hit the road running in your interim position, and you did an excellent job of presenting the materials tonight. I just have a couple of comments. I was glad that Ms. McLaughlin raised the follow-on motions from last spring, because another one of the follow-on motions from last spring was an alignment of the budget to the strategic plan Ignite. And I would very much appreciate that when we see this at the work session this month, that we have a greater alignment of this budget with the strategic plan. It's a Baldrige principle, and it's one that allows us to make more informed decisions going forward as we want to continue a process of process improvement for the way we do things and the transparency for our stakeholders. and it also allows us to make informed decisions in incredibly tough budget years. So if you all could address that, since it was a resolution that we approved last year, or an amendment that a follow-on motion we approved last year. Additionally, I wanted to talk about two items that haven't been raised tonight that I'm hoping you can give us a little bit more guidance on at our work session. One is we asked as a board for you to look at changing the ERFC. It was something that I did not feel comfortable with in changing the terms and conditions of the ERFC for those employees that had been hired with the current ERFC in mind, but aren't fully vested. And so this budget does take into account that change, and I was hoping that perhaps the staff could provide some other alternatives, perhaps through changing the management fees or other ways of dealing with the cost of the ERFC, so that we would not have to change our commitment to those employees that we had hired but had not been vested as of yet. Secondly, I note that there's a $3.7 million in operational resources in the talking points notes that you shared with us, or was shared with us. It says that that 3.7 increase in contractual and operational expenses, including equipment funding for projects in the CIP, to cover 1/3 of the cost of equipment and support for turf field replacement. And I'd like to understand that a bit more, because I know that, and this goes to part of the conversation earlier tonight about equity, most of the turf fields were purchased or were supported by the booster organizations across the county. And so this $3.7 million, where is that going to, and how does that differ from what the booster organizations are contributing or starting to escrow for turf field replacement? And you don't have to answer that tonight, but that is something that piqued my interest.
Absolutely. We will bring more information for you to the work session. I will tell you that there are several things under that 3.7. It's not all turf field. But we did include some funds towards turf field, and we'll explain why that is and how the funds you referenced from boosters is factored into that. But it also includes that school construction support, contractual increases. So we'll have a breakout of that for you so we can examine that fully.
And also the strategic plan linkages. Thank you.
All right, I'll make just a few comments before we wrap this portion of the meeting up for the night. I just wanted to, first of all, thank Dr. Lockhart and Susan Quinn and Kristen Michael and their staff for their excellent work bringing this forward to us tonight. I'm very pleased with this as a starting point for our FY 2018 budget discussions. I will point out that this remains a lean budget. It's certainly restrained, but it does reflect our top priority of raising teacher salaries, which the board has made clear that's something that we feel very strongly about. I was also pleased to see that we're looking forward also to our conversation about the non-teacher scales and finding some more resources there for non-teacher positions as well. And I will repeat, I think my colleagues are aware of this, but within that, I hope we can do something this year for our parent liaisons. And I see that as a critical piece. These are hourly workers who currently aren't eligible for pay increases due based on longevity, as so many of our employees are. They don't get retirement, they don't get sick leave. And so I'm hoping that this is the year that we can do something for that group of really critical employees who are so important to our schools, in particular our high-needs schools. So I've been having conversations with Dr. Lockhart and staff about different approaches, and I'll be having conversations with my colleagues as well as how we might move forward on that. So I just wanted to give my colleagues a heads up, although I know it's not a surprise, but that I'll be wanting to discuss this with each of you as well. And with that, I see no other lights on. So thank you again, Dr. Lockhart, for an excellent presentation. Our next agenda item is 4.01, confirmation of action taken in closed meeting. This is the portion of the meeting where the board will confirm any action regarding issues that were discussed in the closed meeting. These issues may include action taken regarding student disciplinary matters. Board members have discussed each individual case, and at this time will make several motions to confirm the recommended action. I call on Mrs. Strauss for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move to deny the school reassignment appeal of a student who possessed illegal drugs at school with the intention of distributing them, and to confirm the disciplinary decision of the division superintendent.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Corbett Sanders. All those in favor, raise your hand. Hines, Huff, Corbett Sanders, Strauss, Evans, Moon, and Wilson. Oh, and McElveen. All those opposed? All those abstaining? Palchik and McLaughlin. That motion passes. I call on Mr. Wilson for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to deny the school reassignment appeal of a student who possessed and used alcohol and illegal drugs at school, and who also possessed drug paraphernalia at school, and to confirm the disciplinary decision of the division superintendent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Moon. All those in favor, raise your hand. Hines, Palchik, Strauss, Evans, Moon, Wilson, and McElveen. All those opposed? Huff, Corbett Sanders, and McLaughlin. That motion passes. I'm now going to turn the gavel over to Mrs. Strauss.
Thank you. I call on Ms. Evans for a motion.
I move to grant in part the school reassignment appeal of a student who brought a weapon, illegal drugs, and drug paraphernalia to school, and to modify the disciplinary decision of the division superintendent.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Corbett Sanders. All those in favor? I believe.
This is M3.
Yes, this is to grant in part and modify. Yes. Okay, that motion passes with unanimous vote with those present. Thank you. I return the gavel back to Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mrs. Strauss. I call on Mrs. Strauss for a motion.
Thank you. I move to deny the school reassignment appeal of a student who brought a weapon to school and used it to threaten another student, and to confirm the disciplinary decision of the division superintendent.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Palchik. All those in favor, raise your hand. And that vote is unanimous. Motion passes. That concludes our confirmation of action taken in closed meeting. We now go to the consent agenda. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval by the board by a single motion. Many items listed have gone through board review, and documentation has been provided to all board members and the public in advance. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member prior to the meeting. 5.01, approve the minutes of the December 15th, 2016 regular school board meeting. 5.02, appoint individuals to serve on committees as detailed in the agenda item. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Item 6 is new business. The following are new business agenda items. There will not be a vote tonight on these items, but action is scheduled for a future meeting. 6.01, award of contract. Award the contract for the automatic temperature control system replacement at Fairfax Villa Elementary School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. 6.02, award the contract for the asphalt milling and paving at Chantilly High School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. 6.03, award the contract for the asphalt milling and paving at Centerville High School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and to authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. 6.04, award the contract for the asphalt milling and paving at Madison High School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. 6.05, FY 2018 proposed budget. 6.06, authorize the division superintendent and the assistant superintendent, Department of Facilities and Transportation Services, either of whom may act without the other, to take all actions necessary and appropriate to negotiate, execute, and administer such agreements, as well as other documents deemed necessary and appropriate to accept the contribution and to name the McLean High School Stadium Field, the F.H. Furr Sportsplex at Basil Harless Memorial Stadium for the designated period. We now turn to superintendent matters, and I call on Dr. Lockhart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no superintendent matters to share this evening. I thought the budget proposal would be plenty for you.
That was plenty for tonight. Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. Item 8 is board committee reports, and I call on Ms. McLaughlin for an update on governance.
Just briefly, I wanted to make sure my colleagues are aware that we will be having a governance work session discussion on January 19th in the evening, where the Governance Committee is prepared to bring to you two matters, one related to our advocacy letters and the use of school board letterhead, and the other one is some changes to meeting manager protocol and expectations. The Governance Committee will also be meeting that morning to cover a number of topics, one of which we are still reviewing draft policy on corporate sponsorships and naming rights.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. I call on Mrs. Strauss to discuss tonight's forum.
Thank you very much. The board did hold a forum at which Ms. Palchak came forward with a suggestion that the board task the new HRAC to convene a subcommittee to support staff in the development of the school year calendar, beginning with the 2018-19 calendar, and recommend how best to include stakeholders of the community, gather input from the Fairfax County Clergy and Leadership Council, and obtain feedback from parents and staff. The board, there seems to be a consensus that the board would like to develop a more consistent way to gather information from the community as staff works to propose the school calendar. The board asked Ms. Palchak to gather additional information from staff as to exactly how additional input is gathered. There seems to be consensus that we would in fact like to find a way either through a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee to regularly get better input from the community before the recommendation for the school calendar comes forward. So Ms. Palchak will be coming back with more information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we now go to board matters, and I will call on Mr. McElveen for board matters.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy New Year. And thank you just to Dr. Lockhart for his presentation tonight. I appreciate his spirit of sort of the willing warrior as we enter into this budget season. It sounds like it will be a tough budget season, so I appreciate your presentation and look forward to conversations with all of you, my colleagues, in the coming weeks and months. Thanks.
Ms. McLaughlin?
A couple things. I did want to first welcome everybody back and to wish you all Happy New Year. And I also did just want to make my colleagues aware that regrettably this past week we lost two parents in Whitson, and so I was at one of the funerals today because it's a family friend, and it was a beautiful celebration of this parent's life, but it's such an important reminder that we need to hold our family and our friends very dear and realize that we can never know how much time each and every one of us has. So to really not sweat the small stuff, find joy and happiness in our blessings, and be there for one another through good times and the tough times. And then I just did want to also let you all know that because Ms. Fairfax couldn't be here tonight, I just wanted to briefly, ever so briefly, let you know that we did have a SKIP, Successful Children Youth Policy Team, Executive Committee meeting on Wednesday where we talked about a number of items, and I'll touch base with Ms. Fairfax. I think it's just easier if we actually send you sort of an email summary so you know where things are going. But overall, I'm really pleased with the work that continues to get done in an effort to really help our children and youth in the county.
Mr. Moon?
As a part of wishing Happy New Year, just want to remind my board members, my colleagues, that in my tradition, year 2017 is a year of rooster or chicken, and that's my year. I was born in the year of chicken or rooster, I should be saying, and that comes, as you know, once every 12 years. So those who will be either 36, 48, or 60, or 72 is your year. I'm not telling you which one mine is.
Mrs. Strauss?
Thank you. I had the pleasure of offering testimony last Saturday to our Fairfax County delegation to the General Assembly. I spoke on behalf of the board, and our major ask to the General Assembly is to return the VRS payment back to the original schedule, which would save us some $25 million. Chairman of the Fairfax County Board, Sharon Bulova, gave similar testimony. Again, their primary ask of the General Assembly was to go back to the original timeline for the refunding of the VRS, because it would obviously save the schools a significant amount of money. Dick Saslow, a major leader in the General Assembly, has indicated publicly that he will attempt to help Fairfax County. And so we hope that the General Assembly might help us with this issue. And there is this coalition that has been developed between the school board, the Board of Supervisors, and the Urban Crescent in other jurisdictions who would also benefit from returning to the original payback of the VRS. I also attended and am a member of the McLean High School Student Services Advisory Council. They meet regularly to review student services activities. It's a wonderful activity. I also am a member of the Longfellow group and also the Herndon High School group. I hope that those of you who have student services councils that are part of the RAMP organization, that you have an opportunity to serve on these councils. It is an excellent opportunity to find out indeed how things are going in your school and how your student services department is serving their students in their community. Thank you.
Mrs. Corbett-Sanders?
Thank you, and Happy New Year. I want to wish everybody a wonderful, prosperous and joy-filled year. Additionally, I want to wish everybody a great weekend and take the opportunity to celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday by hopefully all of us modeling all of the wonderful things that he did to support equal rights in a peaceful and proactive manner. Did want to raise people's awareness of a new organization that we are starting in the Mount Vernon area. It is the Grand Involve. Grand Involve has been involved at Crestwood Elementary in providing tutoring and educational resources, support, mentoring to students at that school. This is a wonderful group of retirees that want to continue contributing back to the community, and their, grandparents wanting to continue to work with students. And so we will be having a call for a steering committee of people interested in getting involved, and so watch that space. Additionally, the very last thing is we're expecting to have snow this weekend, so please check our website before you go out to activities at our various schools, just to make sure that they are going on. Thank you.
Mrs. Huff?
Thank you. This new year for the school system brings a lot of opportunities. There are still a lot of community forums going to be available for community to give their input to the superintendent search, so look those up and try to attend one. We also, as an audit committee, are looking for a citizen who would be interested in serving as a member on the audit committee. This is really important work, so if you feel qualified and interested, please apply. The audit committee will be reviewing applications not next week, but the following. Thank you.
Ms. Palchik?
Thank you. First, I believe Principal McCann from Frost Middle School was here earlier, sat through the budget, so wanted to thank him. I sent him a little email. It's nice to see our principals here representing their communities. If there are others that don't know you, I apologize. And so we really do appreciate you being here. I know it's easy to sit at home and watch us, but we like seeing your faces. Secondly, as I said last night, I had the chance to meet with PTA boards and with my rep to the Budget Task Force. We also had a presentation from the Jen Spears and the fabulous team on the youth mental health first aid. We are going to be holding one for Providence members, and we'll send out more information when we have logistics. But this is a fabulous training. It's like a mental health CPR to be able to know how to identify and support students. So I highly recommend it. It's free thanks to a wonderful grant for FCPS. Thank you, Dr. Lipp, for your team's efforts on that. We really are looking forward to this. I know Mantua and several other communities have already held it and had really, really good feedback. So it is recommended for anyone affiliated with FCPS, parents, coaches, community members who work with students to learn how to support students, recognize signs, and help students get help. That being said, in addition, my student rep was there last night, and she had great input, so really appreciate her coming out to join us. As Ms. Corbett-Sanders said, Monday is one of my favorite holidays, MLK Junior Day. It's also the National Day of Service. And thanks to last year, I think I have a new tradition of joining the Waples Mill Stamp community at the Jewish Community Center. So if anyone wants to come out Monday morning, 9:30 to 11, we will have several service opportunities, and some of the students are doing a shoe drive. So if you have gently worn or new shoes to donate, please join us and bring them. 8900 Little River Turnpike. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, and I wanted to thank all of the student leaders on the Superintendent's Advisory Committee who had luncheon, well, not lunch, but snacks and a conversation with me the other day from Stewart High School, Annandale High School, and Falls Church High School. It's always wonderful to get together with these students and hear their ideas and their thoughts on a variety of issues. And I want to particularly thank Alice Riley, who is sponsor of the SAC, who helped organize that for me. I also want to reiterate what a couple of my colleagues have said about the superintendent search and the community meetings. We have more coming up next week, next Tuesday and Wednesday. For those in my community, of course, you're welcome to go to any of them that are the public meetings, but in my community, we have one at Stewart High School next Tuesday at 7 p.m., and I hope to see many people there. Happy New Year, and this meeting is adjourned.